Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking on a movement that seems, well, utterly impossible in the 21st century. We're talking about the modern flat earth movement.
Yeah.
And not, some quirky historical belief from 1,000 years back. This is a thriving, online, pretty organized community.
Right now.
Right now, yeah. In the age of, global satellite images and instant video everywhere.
It is astonishing, really. I mean,
Yeah.
for almost 2,500 years, the fact that the Earth is round has been, established science, verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we've gathered all these sources, reports from actual flat Earth conferences, specialized maps they use, even celebrity endorsements.
Right, and the whole YouTube ecosystem dedicated to denying this basic reality.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack this because, as you said, it's kind of staggering.
Yeah.
Our deep dive today, it's fundamentally not about the physics or the astronomy, right?
No, not at all.
We're taking the roundness of the Earth as, the starting point, the foundation. So our mission here is really sociological and psychological. We're exploring the phenomenon itself. The complex mechanics of modern belief, how this kind of radical skepticism spreads, and, why people genuinely choose to reject overwhelming evidence for these really elaborate conspiracies.
And the source material we've got for this investigation, it's pretty rich. We've pulled reports, like I said, from the conferences.
Yeah.
Detailed psychological analyses, looking at conspiracy thinking in general, journalistic accounts, scientists actually talking directly with flat earthers.
And breakdowns of the social media stuff, the algorithms that seem to fuel it.
Right, how it spreads online.
So the goal for you, the listener, it's not about learning that the Earth is round. You definitely know that already.
Right.
It's about getting a quick but thorough insight into the mechanisms of modern science denial itself. How does this work?
Yeah.
And the Flat Earth movement gives us this perfect kind of high-stakes case study for what some people are calling the war on expertise.
It really does. It's a fascinating lens.
So let's start with the belief structure itself. For the people who are genuinely convinced, what does the world actually look like according to them?
Right. And it's crucial to understand this isn't just like a simple pancake idea from grade school.
No.
The modern flat Earth cosmology, it's actually this pretty elaborate system. And it seems specifically designed to explain away all the observations that contradict that core idea.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting because they've basically built this whole counter-universe, haven't they? So detail the main model for us. What's the consensus?
Well, the consensus model, the one you often see promoted by groups like the Flat Earth Society, basically holds that the Earth is this vast circular disk.
Okay, disk.
Yeah, a disk. And it's geographically centered on the North Pole. That's why the Arctic Circle kind of remains this fixed point of reference for everyone on the disk.
Great, the center point. And, okay, if it's a disk, it's got to have an edge, right? Otherwise, everything just falls off. That's the immediate sort of simplistic question everyone asks.
Exactly. And that perimeter is the ice wall of Antarctica.
Oh, okay.
They argue that Antarctica isn't a continent at the bottom of the globe. Instead, it's this colossal wall of ice, something like 150 feet tall, maybe 45 meters.
Wow.
And it completely encircles the entire disk, like, the rim of a pizza pan, geologically speaking.
And that naturally requires a massive cover-up to keep it secret.
Precisely. That's where the conspiracy element really kicks in hard. This ice wall, it has to be perpetually monitored, guarded. And the responsibility for that, according to the theory, falls squarely on NASA.
Of course, NASA.
Yeah. And our sources, they're full of these anecdotes showing just how intense this distrust of institutions is.
Yeah.
Like, there's this one incident from 2017, a conspiracy theorist named Nathan Thompson.
Oh, yeah.
He apparently confronted some guy he thought was a NASA employee at a Starbucks, started shouting at him.
In a Starbucks, seriously.
Yeah, shouting that he had proof NASA was lying, referencing some unsubstantiated claim about an astronaut drowning. It really highlights this foundational need they have to blame a big high-profile institution for maintaining the deception.
Wow. Okay, so if the Earth is a disk, then the sun and moon, they can't be what we think they are. How do they work in this model?
Right. The whole cosmos has to operate completely differently from the heliocentric model. So in the flat Earth model, the sun and moon, they shrink dramatically.
Shrink.
Yeah, they become these small celestial bodies, maybe only 32 miles, like 51 kilometers in diameter. And they're much closer, just hovering above the Earth's surface.
Hovering?
They circle around above the disk in these rotating pathways, almost like spotlights.
Ah, okay. So that's how they explain day and night, just illuminating different parts.
Exactly. Illuminating only portions of the flat surface at any given time.
quite the visual. And it's fascinating. This isn't actually a brand new idea, is it? This cosmology, it has historical roots.
It does, yeah. The visual representation of this kind of structure, you can find it in historical documents.
Mm.
There's a notable one, an 1893 map by a guy named Orlando Ferguson.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's called the Bible map of the world. And it clearly shows this circular disk, the central North Pole, the whole encompassing Antarctic ring.
Right.
So it shows they're drawing on these established, well, fringe maybe, but historical references.
Yeah.
It gives their modern claims this sort of pseudo-historical legitimacy.
Right. It makes it feel less like something they just made up yesterday. Okay, so moving from the physical map to, like, the methodology, how do they justify rejecting all this evidence? They use something called zetetic astronomy.
Yeah, zeticism is really key to understanding the psychology here. It's an investigative method, and it champions empiricism.
Empiricism meaning?
Meaning what you can personally observe and measure yourself. It prioritizes that over, say, rationalism or complex data that someone else gives you.
So basically, if I look out my window and the horizon looks flat to me, then my personal observation has to override, thousands of complex equations, satellite measurements, all the stuff that tells me otherwise.
That is the core deduction, yeah.
Yeah.
The perception that the Earth looks flat must mean it is flat. And then all those incredibly complex rationalizations, we talked about the ice wall, the tiny sun, the global NASA conspiracy.
Yeah.
They're all necessary layers built on top of that initial subjective perception. They have to make the rest of the world fit that feeling.
I see.
And this method, it really appeals because it sort of rejects the priesthood of science.
Yeah.
It basically says, hey, you don't need a PhD or a fancy telescope. Just trust your own eyes. It gives people this immediate sense of, like, intellectual empowerment.
Which, okay, brings up the big question. Are they sincere? I mean, are they just messing around? Or is this, like some of our sources hint, maybe some kind of epistemological exercise?
Well, the sources suggest it's a pretty complex answer, but it leans heavily towards sincerity for a lot of them. Yeah. The Flat Earth Society vice president, a guy named Michael Wilmore, he actually noted that, yeah, sure, the movement can attract people who see it as solipsism for beginners. Or, just a thought experiment about what knowledge is. But he said he is personally convinced, based on his own philosophical thinking and the data he's observed. So for many, this commitment seems really deeply held.
And what's interesting there is the inconsistency you sometimes see. Like Wilmore, for instance, apparently accepts other established science, like global warming and evolution.
Yeah, and that internal contradiction is vital to understanding this. It shows that flat earthers aren't always just monolithic science deniers across the board.
Right.
For some, the doubt is really specific just to cosmology, but then you contrast that with others, like the more literalist proponents. You mentioned Davidson or Rob Skiba. For them, the belief is rooted purely in religious fundamentalism. Skiba explicitly says the conspiracy's ultimate goal is hiding God.
Hiding God.
Yeah. Arguing that a literal reading of Genesis describes this stationary snow globe kind of structure. So the heliocentric globe becomes a direct theological threat to them.
Okay.
And that group often disputes evolution, other scientific theories too, anything that contradicts a really strict biblical interpretation.
So whether the motivation is theology or, this sort of extreme skepticism, the flat model still has to somehow account for the basic physical laws we see every day. Let's just quickly revisit the known scientific problems with it.
Oh, absolutely. The physical implications are, well, they become immediately absurd when you think about them. Take navigation.
Right, GPS.
Exactly. GPS, inertial guidance systems on planes. Every modern navigation tool relies entirely on the geometry of a spherical, rotating planet to work. If the Earth were just a static disk, all the velocity calculations, the triangulation, the constant corrections a GPS satellite needs to make to pinpoint your location, they just fail.
You wouldn't be able to navigate long distances accurately at all.
Not with any precision, no.
And then the most immediate obvious flaw, gravity.
Yeah.
If you accept their disk model, how do you explain things just staying put?
That's probably the biggest hurdle. If gravity pulled towards the central North Pole of the disk, like some models suggest, the effects would be bizarre and instant. As you moved out towards the edge of the disk, people, water, trees, everything would feel gravity pulling it sideways back towards the center.
So things would actually slant?
Yeah, they'd slant away from the center. Rain would literally fall sideways the further out you went.
Okay. And what if they just deny gravity altogether? Some do that, right? They say the disk is constantly accelerating upwards to mimic gravity.
Right, that's another workaround they use. But then you slam right into the problem of the atmosphere.
Ah,
Without gravity holding the air down, the Earth couldn't possibly retain an atmosphere. Our skies would just turn black instantly.
yeah.
All the air would just dissipate into space.
So the amount of mental gymnastics required to maintain the belief when faced with these really basic physical laws, it's just staggering.
It really is. It shows that the psychological commitment must be far, far stronger than any physical evidence they claim to rely on.
Mm.
Yeah, and since the scientific evidence against the flat Earth is so foundational, so obvious, really,
Mm-hmm.
you have to conclude that the movement's success isn't really about its content. It's about how it spreads. It thrives because of modern media structures, social media, and celebrity influence.
Right. The power of a familiar face, a high-profile voice that can just override volumes of academic papers for some people. It gives this relatable entry point for maybe curious onlookers or skeptics.
Absolutely. And that 2016 Twitter spat involving the rapper B.o.B,
Yeah.
that was a really critical moment of amplification.
Oh, yeah, I remember that with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Exactly. He publicly challenged Tyson, the astrophysicist, and the whole conflict ended up with B.o.B releasing a diss track called Flatline.
Right, Flatline.
That whole spectacle just pushed the concept right into the mainstream cultural conversation. Suddenly, lots of people were hearing about it.
And B.o.B.'s main argument, that line, the horizon is always eye level, that became this central, really easily digestible mantra for the movement, didn't it?
It did. It's compelling because it's an immediate visual argument.
What?
It seems hard to refute without getting into complex ideas about perspective and scale.
Yeah, it sounds simple and intuitive.
And that simplicity is its power. You know, a complex argument like Eratosthenes measuring the Earth or the Coriolis effect, that takes time to explain.
Right.
But the idea that the horizon is always eye level, that's instantly understandable. It feels intuitively true if you're just casually looking out, even though it's physically incorrect when you factor in the actual scale.
Then we also saw the NBA player Kyrie Irving causing that huge media storm in 2017.
Right, when he speculated about the flat Earth on a podcast.
Yeah. And even though he later apologized, the damage was done, right?
Yeah.
It suddenly made the topic seem somehow debatable or at least acceptable to discuss in public.
Yeah. It normalized it to an extent, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have other figures like Wiz Khalifa, who apparently based his belief on how much he traveled.
Which is ironic because...
Extremely ironic. To fly around the world, you inherently have to accept the globe model, yet he claimed his travels somehow proved it was flat. It just goes to show that for some celebrities, maybe the belief is either inconsistent or perhaps is primarily a way to generate publicity, build a kind of countercultural identity.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so this all brings us, inevitably, to the most critical engine driving the movement today, the online echo chamber, and specifically the really unique role of YouTube.
Well, YouTube is perfectly structured to propagate this ideology. It's almost tailor-made for it. It's a personalization algorithm.
Designed to keep you watching.
Exactly, designed to maximize engagement. It suggests related videos based on what you've already watched. So if you watch just one video about, say, government deception, the system quickly creates this feedback loop. It starts funneling you deeper and deeper down a rabbit hole of flat Earth content, maybe anti-vaccine stuff, climate denial.
It basically acts like a radicalization engine, doesn't it? Confirming biases you might not even know you had, and then suggesting the next logical step down the conspiracy path.
Precisely. And crucially, the audience relying on this platform is huge and, frankly, susceptible. Studies show YouTube is a primary source of information, especially for young people.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty striking.
Like 56% of kids aged 8 to 12, nearly 70% of teens, watch videos online every day. And about half of all users say they rely on YouTube for educational content.
So it's basically become this de facto alternative curriculum for a lot of people.
It really has.
And instead of getting a professor, you get an influencer who might be a much better storyteller.
Exactly. YouTube is what you'd call a high-context platform. Influencers can present material, even pseudoscience, with this element of, like, naive authenticity. They're often really skilled at framing their non-scientific arguments with compelling narratives. It makes the viewer feel like they're getting direct, unmediated access to some hidden truth that the established experts are trying to hide.
And that direct access, that feeling, builds this powerful sort of parasocial trust, doesn't it? Something academic credentials often struggle to match online.
Absolutely. It feels more personal, more direct.
And the research has actually pinpointed who tends to fall for this the most, right?
Yeah, the studies are pretty consistent. Individuals who score lower on science intelligence tests,
Okay.
combined with having a higher conspiracy mentality, a general distrust of institutions, a belief in widespread secret plots, those individuals are significantly more likely to be swayed by these arguments.
So the YouTube rabbit hole is kind of meticulously paved for people already predisposed to distrust authority and looking for simple, emotionally satisfying answers.
That seems to be exactly how it works.
Okay, let's talk about the content of the main conspiracy. At its core is the NASA hoax. What are the specific claims they make about NASA?
Well, to maintain the flat Earth belief, they have to dismantle all the visual evidence from space. So they denounce every single iconic blue marble photo.
Right, the pictures we've all seen.
Yeah, they claim they're not actual photographs. They say they're composite images or animations or just digital fakes put together by artists at NASA.
And the astronauts.
Just paid actors, according to the theory. The entire NASA complex operates more like, a Hollywood movie studio or Disneyland than a real scientific research facility. That's the narrative.
And these claims get supported by circulating rumors, things designed to delegitimize NASA's history, even when they're easily debunked.
Oh yeah, a classic example is that false claim that NASA was founded before the United States itself,
Right, I've heard that one.
which supposedly proves it was part of some ancient global conspiracy. Of course, the U.S. was founded in 1776, NASA in 1958.
Hmm.
It's just factually wrong.
But the falsehood persists because it serves the narrative.
Exactly. The lie has to be ancient and powerful to explain how the truth has been hidden for so long.
We touched on the religious motivation earlier, that hiding God idea from people like Rob Skiba. That seems like a really critical distinction from other, maybe more secular conspiracy theories.
It absolutely is. It connects the flat Earth belief directly to, for some people, fundamental religious certainty. For this subset of believers, the globe isn't just a scientific error. It's seen as a tool of the devil, basically, used to dismantle the authority of Scripture.
Because if Genesis literally describes a structure where the sun and moon move above a flat Earth,
Then accepting a spinning globe orbiting the sun becomes tantamount to rejecting divine truth itself. It gives the belief this existential weight that makes it incredibly difficult to shake, which is scientific evidence.
wow, okay. And finally, in this section, we can't really ignore the spectacular, if tragic, element of the movement. The daredevil Mad Mike Hughes.
Ah, Mad Mike, yeah. He was a stuntman who spent years trying to launch himself in these homemade, steam-powered rockets.
Specifically to prove the Earth was flat, right? That was his stated goal.
That was his stated goal, yeah. To get high enough to take his own pictures and show the lack of curvature. He tragically died during a launch attempt in 2020.
And the question of sincerity came up immediately there, too, didn't it?
It did. Was his affiliation with the Flat Earth movement genuine? Or was it, as his own PR representative later claimed, maybe just a PR stunt, to get funding for his expensive and obviously dangerous hobby?
It was a very effective spectacle, though, regardless of his actual belief.
Absolutely. Even if it started as a stunt, the amount of public and media attention he generated gave immense visibility to the Flat Earth cause.
Yeah.
It provided this compelling, action-oriented narrative, the lone maverick fighting the system that, an academic debate could just never match. The movement uses these kinds of stunts, whether they're sincere or not, to solidify their image as these fearless truth seekers risking everything against the establishment.
Okay, so having explored that whole psychological landscape, the belief system, how it spreads, we really need to circle back to the actual evidence, particularly to address that primary sensory argument flat earthers use, that the world just looks flat.
Right, and that visual argument is incredibly powerful, but only because it relies on our very limited human scale. There's a great analogy for this. Think of yourself as a tiny, tiny fly standing on a giant circus ball.
Okay.
From the fly's perspective, the surface immediately around it looks perfectly flat.
Right, the size disparity is the key, isn't it?
It's staggering. The Earth is, roughly 42 million feet wide, something like that.
Huge.
And even if you're a tall adult, your viewpoint, your eyes, are only about 6 feet above that surface. From that low vantage point, the curvature over a short distance is just completely imperceptible.
So what is our actual horizon limit then? on the ground.
On flat ground, the visual horizon is only about 3 miles away. Maybe 4.8 kilometers, that's it.
Only 3 miles.
Yeah. To actually perceive the curvature with your naked eye, you need to get significantly higher, over 6 miles or 10 kilometers high,
Ah, okay.
which is why you can start to see it clearly from the window of a commercial airliner, and obviously even more dramatically from space. Our immediate perception is flawed simply because our eye line is so incredibly low compared to the immense scale of the planet.
What's truly remarkable, though, is that humans didn't need satellites or even, like, high-altitude balloons to figure this out. The understanding that the Earth is a globe is literally millennia old. Let's talk about those ancient Hellenistic philosophers.
Yeah, they established sphericity
Hmm.
using really simple, elegant observations that were available to pretty much anyone. The most famous example, of course, is Eratosthenes' calculation.
Right, around 240 BC.
Yeah, around then.
Yeah.
And it's just a masterpiece of early empirical science.
So remind us how exactly he used just shadows and sticks to measure the entire world.
Okay, so he knew that in the city of Syene, which is modern Aswan in Egypt, on the summer solstice, the sun was directly overhead at noon. You could look down a deep well and see the bottom because there was no shadow.
Right, straight down.
But in Alexandria, which was a known distance to the north, a stick placed vertically in the ground at the exact same time did cast a shadow. And he measured the angle of that shadow to be about 7 degrees.
Okay. The implication being, if the Earth was flat, the sun's rays, coming from so far away, should hit both places at the same angle simultaneously. There should be no shadow difference.
Precisely. The difference in the shadow angle proved the Earth had to be curved between those two cities.
Mm-hmm.
So he took that 7-degree angle, which is roughly 150th of a full 360-degree circle, and he multiplied the known distance between the two cities by 50.
And that gave him the circumference.
That gave him his estimate for the Earth's circumference.
Mm-hmm.
His figures, they ranged between about 24,000 and 29,000 miles, which is stunningly close to the actual circumference we know today, about 24,900 miles. He proved the Earth was a globe, and even got its size approximately right, using just basic geometry and observation. No advanced tech needed.
That ingenuity just stands as this perfect rebuttal to the kind of modern skepticism about science, doesn't it? Were there other simple ancient proofs as well?
Oh yeah, one of the easiest ones to visualize even today is just watching a ship sail away from a harbor.
Ah, the disappearing ship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As the ship sails away, you see the hull disappear first, below the horizon. Then, gradually, the mast sinks out of view.
Right.
If the Earth were flat, the ship would just shrink uniformly, getting smaller and smaller until you couldn't see it anymore. Wouldn't have that distinct sinking effect over the curve.
Makes sense. And celestial observations, they provided pretty irrefutable proof too, didn't they?
They did. If you watch the Earth's shadow cast onto the moon during a lunar eclipse,
Yeah.
that shadow is always curved, consistently curved, which is the shadow of a sphere, not a flat disk. A disk would cast a straight line shadow sometimes, depending on the angle.
Good point.
And furthermore, if you travel significantly north or south, say from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere,
Mm-hmm.
you observe completely different constellations in the night sky. You're looking at different quadrants of space at the same time of year. That can only happen if you're standing on different parts of a sphere. On a flat disk, everyone should see the same sky, just maybe rotated differently.
Okay, so the ancient Greeks had it figured out. Let's pivot now to the modern, just overwhelming evidence that flat earthers are basically forced to dismiss as the greatest hoax in history.
Right. And today, we have global imagery,
Mm-hmm.
not just from NASA, but from multiple, often competing space agencies.
Yeah, that's a key point.
We have photos of the round Earth from NASA, sure, but also Roscosmos, the Russian agency, JXA from Japan, the Chinese space agency, CNSS.
Mm-hmm.
Like after the Shenzhou 12 mission, a Chinese astronaut, Tang Hongbo, captured this beautiful image of the round Earth, clearly showing the lights of North Africa.
So, to believe the flat Earth model, you have to believe that all these nations, who are often political rivals, are somehow collaborating perfectly, secretly, just to maintain this single lie about the shape of the planet.
The scale of the required conspiracy becomes truly immense, yeah.
And beyond just photographs, we have physical laws that rely entirely on a rotating sphere. Let's expand a bit on the Coriolis effect.
The Coriolis effect is such a perfect example of rotational physics in action, observable right here on Earth's surface.
Explain it simply.
Okay, so on a rotating sphere, anything moving freely across the surface like air masses or ocean currents gets deflected from a straight path.
Deflected how?
to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere.
Ah, okay.
This deflection is precisely why hurricanes spin counterclockwise in the north and clockwise in the south. It's why large-scale ocean currents circulate the way they do. This physical law is only consistent with a rotating sphere.
So if the Earth were just a flat, non-spinning disk, you wouldn't get that consistent deflection pattern.
No, you'd have no Coriolis effect at all.
Hmm.
Hurricanes might spin unpredictably or maybe uniformly everywhere, but not with that consistent hemispheric difference.
Got it. And finally, let's just tackle the central pillar of their model again, that Antarctic ice wall. If Antarctica really is this tens of thousands of miles long barrier surrounding the edge, well, global travel should be impossible, or at least vastly different.
Right, it should take forever to get around it.
Yet people fly over or around Antarctica constantly.
Commercial air travel routinely circumnavigates the globe. And specifically, there are flights, like from Santiago, Chile, to Auckland, New Zealand, that cross directly over the area flat earthers claim is this monumental, impassable barrier. And they complete the journey in a time frame perfectly consistent with spherical geometry, not the vastly longer route the flat map would dictate.
Oh, okay.
And furthermore, some recent sources even mention expeditions where flat earthers themselves travel to Antarctica.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they observe the 24-hour sun during the Antarctic summer.
Which is a problem for their model.
A huge problem. The 24-hour sun is utterly consistent with the globe model and axial tilt, but it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to integrate into their theories of a small, close sun acting like a spotlight over a flat disk. So, if the evidence against the flat Earth is just so accessible, so simple in many ways, and so multi-layered, everything from ancient sticks to modern satellites,
Yeah.
why on earth does this belief persist? And that really takes us to the heart of the matter, the psychology and the sociology of science denial.
Right. And scholars who study this, they've established a pretty clear framework for understanding how science denial works in general. The Flat Earth movement seems to tick all the boxes, embodying what they identify as the 5 basic traits. Let's just list them quickly and connect them back.
Okay. So the 5 traits are, first, a strong belief in conspiracy theories. We've definitely seen that with the NASA hoax.
Check.
Second, cherry-picking evidence, only relying on evidence that seems to support their view, like the horizon looking flat, while ignoring contradictory evidence. Third, embracing impossible standards for proof for the opposition while having very low standards for their own claims. Fourth, relying on fake experts or misrepresenting real experts. Think of the YouTube storytellers versus actual scientists.
Yeah.
And fifth, making pervasive logical errors and using flawed reasoning like the inconsistencies with gravity or navigation.
Okay. And the engine that really drives that second trait, the cherry picking, is confirmation bias, right? That basic human tendency to favor, interpret, and remember information that just reinforces what you already believe, no matter how flimsy it is.
Absolutely. Confirmation bias is huge here. And we can't really talk about that without revisiting that definitive anecdote involving the philosopher Lee McIntyre. He studied science denial.
Right. He engaged directly with a flat earther, trying to find some common ground, some testable claim. Remind us of the test he proposed.
Okay, so McIntyre suggested a really simple, falsifiable criterion. He told the flat earther, just book a standard commercial flight over Antarctica, say from Santiago to Auckland. If the Earth was the huge disk they claim, stretching tens of thousands of miles across, that plane would absolutely have to stop and refuel somewhere. The distance would just be immense.
Right.
But if it's a globe, the flight time would be predictable, consistent with known spherical geometry, no refueling needed mid-flight over the ice.
So a clear, simple empirical test anyone could theoretically do. What happened when the flat earther was actually pressed on this? How did they respond?
Well, according to McIntyre, the flat earther, essentially backed into a logical corner, immediately moved the goalposts. Massively.
No, so.
He claimed that the entire history of commercial aviation, the very idea that planes need to land and refuel on long journeys at all, could itself be a staged hoax.
Wait. The entire concept of refueling planes is a hoax.
Yeah, a hoax designed over decades to condition people into believing planes need fuel over long distances. All apparently set up just to fool them in that specific debate years later.
Okay, let's just pause and appreciate the scale of cognitive distortion required for that statement. The conspiracy isn't just faking moon landings or NASA photos anymore.
No.
It has to encompass every single flight plan, every airport, every pilot, every fuel tanker truck, stretching back over 80 years of aviation history. All coordinated, all faked, just to win an argument with Lee McIntyre.
That's the psychological breakthrough moment, isn't it? As McIntyre rightly pointed out, this kind of response completely violates Karl Popper's famous principle of falsifiability.
Explain that principle again.
Popper argued that for a theory to be scientific, there must be some conceivable observation or experiment that could potentially prove it false. If there is literally nothing, no observation, no experiment, no amount of testimony that could ever disprove your theory,
Yeah.
then it's not actually a scientific theory at all. It's just become an unshakable belief system, completely immune to any contrary evidence.
That deep, deep resistance to evidence, it really pushes us into the realm of philosophy, doesn't it? You mentioned epistemic contextualism earlier. That sounds dense. What does that philosophy of knowledge, framed by context, mean for the average person maybe encountering a flat earther online or something?
Okay, yeah, it sounds academic, but the core idea is fairly simple. It basically means that the standards for what counts as knowing something can change depending on the context or the environment you're operating in.
How does that apply here?
Well, if you deliberately choose to operate within this extreme context, a context where you assume a pervasive global conspiracy involving every world government, every space agency, every airline pilot is actually true.
Okay, assuming that reality.
Then yes, the conclusion that you don't know the Earth is round becomes sort of logically sound within that specific hyperskeptical bubble.
Right, because in that bubble, you can't trust any external evidence.
Exactly. In that extreme context, you can't trust your phone's GPS, you can't trust history books, you can't trust photos from friends traveling overseas. Nothing is reliable. So the conclusion that you don't know much of anything is, as philosophers say, unsurprising. But it basically means nobody knows much at all in that scenario.
The moment we step out of that extreme philosophical context and return to the ordinary context of everyday life, we have to rely on testimony and consensus expertise just to function, don't we?
Absolutely. When you get on a commercial flight, you are implicitly trusting centuries of spherical geometry, physics, engineering. If we start denying the established laws of physics when it comes to cosmology, well, where do we draw the line?
Yeah.
We generally trust the judgments of medical science when we go to the hospital, right? We trust the structural engineering principles that built the bridges we drive across every day. Epistemic contextualism basically shows us that while that kind of extreme skepticism can be an interesting philosophical exercise, it becomes functionally impossible and, frankly, paralyzing to live by in the real world.
Okay. That makes sense. Finally, let's touch on the communication problem here, because it's not just the denialists who sometimes create issues. The way fervent science affirmationists respond can actually be damaging, too.
That's a really important point from our sources, yeah. They discuss this problematic rhetorical style that gets adopted sometimes by both sides, the fervent denialists and the equally fervent science affirmationists.
Yeah.
It's called the Esperantist epideictic discursive genre.
Okay, that is definitely a mouthful. In plain English, what is that style of communication?
It's basically sterile intellectual posturing. It involves dogmatically asserting absolute truth, often using technical jargon mainly to convey authority rather than to explain clearly, and focusing heavily on praising your own group, we rational thinkers, while simultaneously blaming or belittling the opposition. Those idiots.
Okay, so the flat earthers might throw around pseudoscientific terms like empirical evidence or zetetic method to sound authoritative,
Right.
while sometimes the experts or passionate defenders of science just retort by dismissing them as morons or irrational and maybe refusing to even engage.
Exactly. And that's the danger. When fervent affirmationists just dismiss flat earthers out of hand, like that physicist mentioned in one source who just refused to answer their emails,
Yeah.
they risk triggering a powerful backfire effect. Feeling dismissed, feeling belittled, it actually reinforces the denialist core belief. It makes them feel like they must be marginalized, persecuted truth seekers.
Because the establishment is afraid to debate them or takes them for fools?
Precisely. It confirms their suspicion that they're on the right path. It deepens that conspiratorial identity and makes them dig their heels in even further.
So if direct confrontation and dismissal often fail or even backfire, what is the role of education in tackling this deeper crisis of trust and misinformation?
Well, educators are increasingly recognizing that critical thinking isn't just an academic skill anymore. It has to be taught as a fundamental survival skill for navigating the modern world. So teachers are integrating lessons, specifically designed to help students distinguish credible information from pervasive pseudoscience, whether that's flat Earth claims or climate denial or anti-vax narratives.
And the key is not just teaching the facts like the Earth is round, but teaching the process of science.
Yeah, exactly that. The goal is to move students away from that dogmatic, absolute truth view of science that ironically feeds science denial on both sides.
Right.
Instead, science needs to be presented as it actually works, as a process that uses probability, that deals with evolving evidence, and crucially requires a willingness to change conclusions when new, reliable data emerges. The belief system of the flat earther is kind of horrified by complexity and nuance.
Yeah.
So the solution, arguably, is teaching the beauty and the utility of complexity itself, teaching how we know things, not just what we know. Hashtag outro.
So this deep dive into the modern flat Earth movement, it really shows us that it's a mirror, isn't it? Reflecting this deep modern crisis. It seems to be less about simple astronomy and much, much more about the breakdown of trust. Trust in institutions, trust in expertise, trust in even a shared verifiable reality.
Yeah, and all amplified, accelerated by social media algorithms that are designed fundamentally for engagement, not necessarily for truth.
Mm-hmm. We've seen just how powerful confirmation bias can be, allowing believers to construct these unbelievably vast, decades-long global conspiracies just to protect one core assumption.
Yeah, it demonstrates the profound psychological effort that's required to sustain a belief that really defies millennia of direct observation and basic physics.
And as one philosopher put it, the core malfunction of science denial, whether it's the ice wall or the NASA hoax or anything else, is its horrifically simplistic view of the world. It's this fundamental rejection of the complexity and nuance that are actually essential for navigating reality. So the challenge for all of us, really, is choosing to employ the critical thinking that embraces that complexity rather than fleeing from it.
And scientific truths themselves, they aren't static dogma. They're constantly developing, right? Based on new experiments, evolving evidence. So maybe the question for you listening is, what foundational truth are you currently holding on to that you might be willing to hold up to the light, to challenge with new evidence if it came along?
That's a great question. Where do you personally draw the line between healthy, active skepticism, the kind that actually fuels genuine scientific inquiry, and that unshakable, non-falsifiable belief system that seems to define modern science denial? That really is the essential question this whole deep dive kind of compels us to explore further, isn't it?